Welcome to Mission Gathering Christian Church, Charlotte. You are welcome here if you grew up in the church and have lost your faith. If you are in a moment of deconstruction or reconstruction, if scandals, politics, and hate have led you into doubt.
We want you to know that you are more than what you produce. You are more than your past. Our time together is not about trying to fix you. Because, child of God, you are not broken. Our time here is not about being productive. It's about being fully present here and now. So through our practice and attention, we can connect to the deepest part of ourselves, so that together we may more clearly see the divine within, outside of, and beyond ourselves.
So if you are Asian, Latinx, Black, White, or Indigenous, if you are male or female, trans, or non-binary, if you are 3 days old, 30 years old, or 103 years old, if you've never stepped foot in a church, or if you are Buddhist, Roman Catholic, agnostic, or are a lifelong evangelical, if you are single, married, divorced, separated, or partnered, if you are straight, gay, lesbian, asexual, or bisexual,
If you are a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a socialist, or not registered to vote, if you have or had addictions, phobias, abortions, or a criminal record, if you own your home, rent, live with your parents, or are homeless, if you are fully abled, disabled, or a person of differing abilities,
you are welcome to journey with us, to come and share our sacred meal at the table of grace, to join in labor with us in the creation of a better world, to become yourself truly and wholly, welcome one and all.
Hey everybody, Pastor Andrew here, and thank you for joining us for our second Sunday of trying to detangle these constrictions that we have in our lives that keep us from living the whole life that we want to live. And this week, in our time of worship through giving, we have a special request. We have a family here at MG who's recently been evicted on a very short timetable, and we're trying to raise some money to help them get a security deposit for their next place. So if you want to give through the Cash App or the Venmo or by going to the giving platform on our website, and if you would mark that gift Home Sweet Home, that'll help us get them into a place where they can be able to be a family, to live together with a mom, 3 kids, and her elderly mom, to be able to find joy and security and safety in this world. So for the gifts that you will give to make this miracle happen for this family, I say thank you and offer this prayer of dedication. Gracious, loving God, you lack for nothing. All things are yours. And from you flows a bounty that we get to give to each other, to show mutual support and aid in times of need, to find and create new pathways of love and joy. We thank you and we dedicate these gifts. In Jesus' name, amen.
when God began to create the heavens and the earth was without shape or form. It was dark over the deep sea, and God's wind swept over the waters. God said, "Let there be light." And so light appeared. God saw how good the light was. God separated the light from the darkness. God named the light day and the darkness night. There was evening and there was morning, the first day.
God said, "Let there be a dome in the middle of the waters to separate the waters from each other." 7. God made the dome and separated the waters under the dome from the waters above the dome. And it happened in that way. God named the dome sky. There was evening and there was morning, the second day.
God said, "Let the waters under the sky come together into one place so that the dry land can appear." And that's what happened. God named the dry land earth, and he named the gathered waters seas. God saw how good it was. God said, "Let the earth grow plant life, plants yielding seeds and fruit trees bearing fruit with seeds inside it, each according to its kind throughout the earth." And that's what happened. The earth produced plant life, plants yielding seeds, each according to its kind, and trees bearing fruit with seeds inside it, each according to its kind. God saw how good it was. There was evening and there was morning, the third day.
God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night. They will mark events, sacred seasons, days, and years. They will be lights in the dome of the sky to shine on the earth." And that's what happened. God made the stars and two great lights, the larger light to rule over the day and the smaller light to rule over the night. God put them in the dome of the sky to shine on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw how good it was. There was evening and there was morning, the fourth day.
God said, "Let the waters swarm with living things, and let birds fly above the earth up in the dome of the sky." God created the great sea animals, and all the tiny living things that swarm in the waters, each according to its kind, and all the winged birds, each according to its kind. God saw how good it was. Then God blessed them. "Be fertile and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." There was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day.
God said, "Let the earth produce every kind of living thing, livestock, crawling things, and wildlife." And that's what happened. God made every kind of wildlife, every kind of livestock, and every kind of creature that crawls on the ground. God saw how good it was. Then God said, "Let us make humanity in our image to resemble us, so that they may take charge of the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the earth, and all the crawling things on earth." God created humanity in God's own image. In the divine image, God created them up. All forms of gender, God created them.
God blessed them and said to them, "Be fertile and multiply, fill the earth and master it. Take charge of the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, and everything crawling on the ground." Then God said, "I now give to you all the plants on the earth that yield seeds, and all the trees whose fruit produces its seeds within it. These will be your food. To all wildlife, to all the birds in the sky, and to everything crawling on the ground, to everything that breathes, I give all the green grasses for food." And that's what happened. God saw everything they had made. It was supremely good.
Bereshit, also known as Genesis chapter 1 verses 1 through 31. The Common English Bible Translation. The Word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
So last week we talked about how most of us are feeling super burnt out at the moment because we've had to spend so much time acting and reacting to whether it's the pandemic, whether it's getting back to work, the economy, you name it. There's so many things going on that we've been acting and reacting to. All the changes in our daily lives, all the isolation, the loneliness, the leaving our streams, those streams of action, those streams of flowing out into the world, of interacting with the world, leaving them dry, leaving them parched and stagnant, like not flowing like they should be. And we talked about last week how the way forward, the way out of this parched state, is to do the inner work of contemplation and spiritual formation, or as Thomas Merton liked to call it, visiting our internal spring. And it takes real effort. It takes real work to connect with the deepest part of ourselves. Everyone can do it. It just takes practice. Well, one of the things that gets in the way, or at least here we're going to talk about over the next few weeks, 9 of the things that get in the way, is these constrictions that come to us from our internal critic, from that voice that speaks inside of us telling us we can't connect. We can't be this, we can't do that. That keeps our spring from bubbling at its full capacity and allowing that bubbling to flow out and be a blessing to others. So this morning we're going to work on our first 2 of these constrictions. The first one is I'm not good enough, and the second one is I'm not important. By doing this work to confront our inner critic, we do this so that we can be able not only to start healing within ourselves, but so that like our damage, our pain, our afflictions, we don't inflict them on others. We learn to navigate a new way through this world, creating less damage than has been done to us as we begin to repair and heal the damage that's happened in our own lives. I think that's a pretty good goal, don't you? When I think back to this first constriction, the place where I experienced it the most succinctly, and like the most I can remember it, was Sunday school. I mean, I honestly learned that I'm not good enough from church. And the church has, for most of its history, been really great at telling children that we're born not good enough. You remember how everyone tells you you're born with original sin? Well, at least in the Western church, because the Greek Orthodox Church and Judaism don't believe in original sin. But in Western European Christianity, since about the 4th century, when this guy named St. Augustine came up with the idea of original sin, the starting point for most churches when we talk about our value as people is that we're inherently not good enough. Maybe that's where you first felt this constriction too. Whether it was from church or your family spouting off these doctrines of that you're not good enough, you're not a good person because some lady ate an apple and her husband ate an apple a long, long time ago. Or maybe that's not what happened. Maybe you had a parent whose love was just always unattainable, who made you feel like you had to do things to earn and work for their love. Maybe you just never felt good enough because of things that people said to you all the time, or because of some sort of traumatic thing that happened in your past. That's the thing. Like, all constrictions are born in us through some traumatic event or pattern of experiences. All constrictions are born into us through some traumatic event or pattern of experiences. It's what Andrew Lang says in his book. And I know that the word trauma has a lot attached to it, right? If you're from my generation, if you're a millennial, like, you hear it all the time, you're probably making TikToks about it. If you're a boomer, you're tired of hearing about everyone's trauma, right? Just suck it up. If you're Gen X, I don't know what you're doing. But trauma has a lot attached to it. So before we discuss more about trauma, let's get a working definition of what I'm talking about. So the working definition as we go through the series for trauma will be that trauma is not what has been inflicted on you, but instead what happens within your mind and body as a result of what has happened to you. So the trauma isn't necessarily the person or the intention behind what they did. It's what it does internally in your body and your mind to you. That's the hard part about a constriction, like number one, is that it goes really far back into our development. It goes really far back into all of the things that we have to break down when we want to get better. So our internal dialogues, because of how far back this goes, our internal dialogues always kind of start at that place. This is the foundation of your internal critic, is that you're not good enough. There's something inherently flawed in you. And the hard part about this too is over time, this internal dialogue begins to show in your body, right? Like, I go to the chiropractor. She's trying to help my posture, but a part of that internal dialogue, it pulls you forward, pulls you down. Maybe your shoulders are always tense, and you don't like people to touch your shoulders, or your back, your upper back or your lower back is always tense, or your hands just seem to grip tightly all the time. This kind of constriction wants to pull you down and shrink you down, making sure that you take up as little space as possible. If you've been socialized as a woman or a femme in this society, you know that really well, right? You've already been emotionally and physically trained to shrink down for the needs of everyone else, for their emotional needs, for their physical needs, to put others first and to shrink. We wear and we carry that constriction into how we see the world, don't we? When you're pulled forward, when you're shrunk down, moving through this world with a closed off posture, we tell ourselves it's protecting us. We tell ourselves it's so that we don't make any waves, so that we don't call attention to ourselves, so that we can keep everything close. But really what we're doing is we're limiting the ways that we can see the world around us and react to it. We only see it through the negative lens of what's going on only through our trauma and only through this idea of victimhood. And that's not me blaming victims or saying that like something bad didn't happen to you. I guarantee you something bad has happened to you, but you don't have to shrink down, or you don't have to stay shrunk down because of it. You see, we can choose to breathe deep from our bellies, to take in that deep cleansing breath, to open ourselves to the world, learning to speak non-violently to each other, and to express needs and to place boundaries in, learning to be non-judgmental and to pause when we expand our lungs and breathe before responding to people with our first lower self, that voice of the inner critic. We can expand our lungs to fill them with oxygen so that our minds and our hearts can be open to the world around us and to what amazing possibilities that there are. And I'm not saying this will erase your pain. I'm not saying this will get rid of all the bad things that happened or it'll solve all of your problems. But when we change our posture from shrunken down to open, it reshapes how we respond to the pain. It reshapes how we respond to our problems. Reshapes how we respond to each other. By taking on this new posture, this open posture. Failure, all those mistakes, those things that your inner critic tells you that's why you're not good enough, those just become opportunities to learn. They become a chance to grow. They become a part of just living this one precious and wild life. So instead of an accusation that you're not good enough, when you mess up, it's a chance to get back up again. So I want to take a moment to lead you through an exercise to let you be in your body for a second, to let you feel what we're talking about here with these different postures. So this exercise is called the right sizing exercise. So I want you to spread out your arms like this. Spread your feet to a comfortable space. Make sure you have some space all around you. Then bring your arms back down. Kind of relax a little. Get ready. And then we're going to expand slowly. Breathing in. Breathing out. Breathing in and out. Feel your body right now. What does it feel like to be taking up this much space? Maybe you want to spread your legs some. Spread out even more. Just allowing everything to flow in and out. Yeah, those deep belly breaths in and out. This is what it's like to take up space. Maybe you don't do this very often. Maybe you don't ever take up as much space as this. But you have an amount of space that's just for you, that you are free to occupy. So moving back to our equilibrium slowly and steadily. We're going to show now what it feels like to shrink down. So we're going to fold up our arms and bring them in, bending forward and down. Maybe even bend your knees, breathing in and out, in and out. Coming back up to your equilibrium, resting in this balanced state. This is something that you can do when you feel like you're not able to take up your rightful amount of space, when you feel like you're unable to experience the world around you in an open and positive way. You can expand and contract and move back to the equilibrium as a way of focusing back in and realizing that you are a valuable part of all of it. I know that exercise is a little bit different and it's not what we're normally used to doing in church, but I think it's good to be in our bodies. I also want to do something right now too. I want you to say it along with me. If you're in the car, wherever, you can say it quietly. If you're in a cafe right now, I want you to repeat after me. I am good enough. Do it. I am good enough. Because you are good enough. Say it again. I am good enough. Not only are you good enough, yes, you personally, not only are you good enough, but you're also important. The form of capitalism and consumerism we live in makes us feel like we're not important. Makes us feel that we're lacking, that we have a need, that something external has to be added in order for us to be special and to have any way of being of matter or importance to anyone in the world. We think that the next cool thing or the next this or that or the next diet or getting your body to look like this or that or having the right haircut or doing that, all of these things that we pile up and we pile up and we pile up, we think that they will make us more important, that they'll make up for all the times that people slighted us, those perceived slights, those things that they said to us, those things that they did to us that made us feel unimportant, unvalued, and unseen. It can cause this constriction to show up in our lives. This constriction where you don't feel important. This constriction shows up in ways that are pretty surprising. Like, I'll give you an example of how this constriction shows up in your life. When somebody compliments you, like really compliments you, like thanks you for something that you've done, what does your body do? Do you start feeling cringy and weird and you start saying, it's no problem? No. You just panic. You don't know what to do with that praise. That's because you're experiencing this constriction. Because if you did something good for somebody and they're responding with thankfulness, that's awesome. But we've been trained that we don't matter enough to even accept that sort of praise. I think it's safe to say that most of us who are socialized as Christians in the United States cringe when we get positive feedback because we were always told we're a sinner, we're worthless, and God had to beat up his own son in order for us to be of any value. Internalize this opposite position of being important, that we can't be important. Now, I know there are some narcissists among us who would argue with that, right? They totally feel important all of the time. But that's not what we're talking. And I get it. You might have friends that say, oh, we're just insignificant specks on a planet in a universe that's ever expanding. And then in the grand pile up of history, your life doesn't matter that much at all. And that's true. If we're just basing everything off of pure mathematics, right? Off of statistics. But there's more to life than that. There's more to this reality than that. There's a deeper reality. It says that you matter, that you're important, that deep part of you, that genuine part of you. There will never be a combination of your DNA ever to exist again. Genuine you that exists right now in this moment, at this time, in this one precious life. That's the thing we're trying to get to when we untangle all of these constrictions that have built up in our lives. Mia Bystar says this about each of you. Yes, you are worthy of art making. Dispense with the hierarchy in your head that silences your own creative voice. It is not only your birthright to create, it is your true nature. The world will be healed when you take up your brush, when you shake your body and sing your heart out. Somewhere along the way, somebody told you you weren't good at anything, or somebody told you you weren't good at something that you enjoyed doing. But one of the keys to unconstricting yourselves, one of the keys to opening up to the world, to get creative. To stop listening to that inner critic that says you can't dance and dance like a fool when you feel like it. To stop listening to that inner critic that says you can't sing and sing in the shower, in the car, or even in the grocery store as loud as you want. Stop listening to that critic that says your doodles, your crafting, your coloring pages isn't art, because it's art. You're creating. You can sing, you can dance, you can draw yourself into the divine of who you really are. Beloved, you are a co-creator with God. You are the divine's paintbrush, making reality as we go into something beautiful. You're important. I think some of the hang-ups that we have with saying that we're important is we feel like if we say we're important, it's at the expense of other people. And beloveds, that's not true. You can be important, and someone else can be too. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not a pizza pie that goes away slice after slice. Life is infinitely bigger than that. You're important. Not because you're more important than someone else, because in the reality, you are everyone else. I know, way out there hippie stuff, but think about it. Your atoms are swirling around you. Your atomic particles are connected to other atomic particles, subatomic particles. We're pulling and pushing on each other's atoms and energy all over this world, this universe, this planet. You're connected to all of it. So of course you're important. I get it. It can be really hard when you feel unrecognized, unseen, and acting out of that need to feel like we can be seen, to feel like we can be recognized. That can create so many destructive behaviors in our life. But if we turn our eye away from the inner critic of our brain, we turn it inward, turn it inwardly into that deepest part of ourselves. We open our hearts to listen. If we have that posture of openness to listen, we can find what Howard Thurman, who was a mentor and spiritual teacher of Dr. King, called the voice of the genuine. God spark in you, that deepness. You're good enough. And you're important. So I want to end our talk today by doing this. I want to read Howard Thurman's words, an address he gave in 1980 to the graduates of Spelman College about finding that genuine voice within you, the voice of the genuine. So get comfy, stretch if you need to. If you're not driving right now, close your eyes. Let these words wash over you. There's something in every one of you that waits, listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself, and if you cannot hear it, you will never find whatever it is for which you are searching. And if you hear it and do not follow it, it was better that you had never been born. You are the only you that has ever lived. Your idiom is the only idiom of its kind in all existence. And if you cannot hear the sound of the genuine in you, you will all of your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. There is in you something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. And sometimes there's so much traffic going on in your minds, so many different kinds of signals, so many vast impulses floating through your organism that go back thousands of generations, long before you were even a thought in the mind of creation, and you are buffeted by these. And in the midst of all of this, you have got to find out what your name is. Who are you? How does the sound of the genuine come through to you? The sound of the genuine is flowing through you. Do not be deceived and thrown off by all the noises that are a part of even your dreams, your ambitions, so that you don't hear the sound of the genuine in you, because that is the only true guide that you will ever have. And if you don't have that, then you don't have a thing. You may be famous, you may be whatever the other ideals are, which are a part of this generation, but you know you don't have the foggiest notion of who you are, where you are going, what you want. Cultivate the discipline of listening to the sound of the genuine in yourself. Christian gathering and friends, may you come to see that you have been good enough from the beginning. That it's not about original sin, but original blessing, that God said you were good. May you come to see that you are important to the fabric of this reality, to the story of the world, and to God's story in the universe. Christian gathering and friends, may it be so, and amen.